Welcome to WebRTC Live. In WebRTC Live, we cover the latest technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC.Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Arin Sime, CEO and founder of WebRTC.Ventures. We are a custom design and development firm building live video applications. You can learn more about us at WebRTC.Ventures. I'm really excited today to have Tsahi Levent-Levi as my guest. He is here to talk about supporting WebRTC applications. If you don't know Tsahi already, you should definitely go check out bloggeek.me. And if you're watching this webinar, you most likely have seen his blog posts already and the many white papers and courses that he does around WebRTC. So definitely a big thought leader in the space and consultant around all things WebRTC. So we're really happy to have him here. He's also co-organizer, I guess is the right term, of the Cranky Geek series of WebRTC conferences. And there's one coming up, in fact, on Friday, November 15th, I believe, in San Francisco. And you can learn more about that at crankygeek.com. We'll have a member of the WebRTC Ventures team there also, Alberto Gonzalez. So feel free to say hi to Alberto if you're there, and say hi to Tsahi, of course, and definitely check that out. Those are a great series of events. So it is my pleasure to welcome Tsahi here. Let me bring him up on the big screen. There you are. Thanks for joining us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Arin.
Oh, our pleasure. So feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and it's your show for a little while here. And for those watching, feel free to ask any questions along the way, and we'll get to those at the end.
So hi, everyone. I'm Tsahi Levent-Levi. I'm like a consultant and analyst in the space of digital communication. A lot of the things that I do revolve and start from bloggeek.me, where I write a lot of the content that is out there from me. My main focus today is WebRTC and CPaaS, Communication Platform as a Service. And in the recent 2 years, I've started also looking at the machine learning space, still around communication and the real-time part of it. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called TestRTC, where we test and monitor WebRTC-based applications. Recently, also, that got me towards the support space with WebRTC. And I want to share with you a bit of the insights that I've had from the work that I've done there with one of our clients at TestRTC. And where that leads me these days. For some unknown reason, from the beginning of this year, the W3C approached me and asked me to be the evangelist for them on WebRTC. So that's another title that I have. Still not sure what that means, but it's part of the things that I've been doing in the last several years. So let's start with how exactly we end up developing applications with WebRTC. And that's like the development cycle that exists everywhere in all other products as well. So usually or typically we'll start with designing the things that we're doing. And in this design phase, you'll have a product manager that will lead the requirements and what we want out of the product. And we'll have the developers, or at least the lead developer or a project manager that will say what can and can't be done and assist in putting the milestones and phases for the product. Then we have the development phase. This is where everything gets done, with the main focus being the developers, and product management is there, to answer specific questions, so go through the nuances of the requirements versus what is being implemented. From development, we will move from testing. And in the testing phase, you've got QA and developers leading that part. And then we launch the product and we need to maintain it. Cloud-based product today means ongoing maintenance with DevOps teams. So we've got the ops team working on maintenance. And that's great. For me, that was the whole world. Especially since I come from the development space and product management. This is what I've seen all the time. And this is what I saw also in TestRTC, where we deal with the development and the testing phases. Okay, One thing that dawned on me this year, and that was because of a company that came to us at WebRTC called TalkDesk, and they said, you know what, we need a solution from you. I said, well, but I tried reaching out to you guys, and you said you don't need us. And he said, that was the developers. I'm from the support team. I've got a totally different need, and I need a solution from someone to help me with maintaining the product that we have on the market. So that was really new to me. And if you think about it, today, if you look at WebRTC and the reasons we have these issues, or the reasons that TalkDesk end up coming to us and saying we've got a problem with supporting our WebRTC product, was, first of all, we're living in the cloud today. Almost all of the WebRTC-based applications are cloud-based, and they run on unmanaged networks. You don't have control over where your users are going to be. They're going to run the system from anywhere with different types of browsers and different types of machines running on a large variety of networks. And you have no control over that. Now, what I noticed there, or what the main gripe and concern is, that if you are in a support space and you need to support a WebRTC-based application, what you'll find out over time is that over 90% of the support issues that you're dealing with are not due to bugs or issues on your end, but rather issues in the devices and the network of your client. So most of the time, someone will come and complain about things that he is causing on his own. And that's a real issue. So these are two things that you need to do yesterday if you have built a WebRTC application and you have it running in production, and you want to be able to support it properly, and you want also to be able to deal with these 90% of support issues. The first one is you need to collect more data and insights. Okay, you need to know exactly what happens with your product. Usually what happens, people build their application and that's it. Now that things don't work in production, they have no clue why. A customer comes, he complains, and you don't know what to do with it exactly. So you should probably collect data and insights so you'll be able to know and understand what is happening to your customers. And the second thing is you need to train the support team to understand what WebRTC is, what your product is doing, how it is doing that, what is the infrastructure of your product, and how to understand if an issue happens because of a client or because of your own infrastructure. Okay, so they don't harass the R&D team too much. So let's see what it means to collect more data and insights. Here are the things that you need to know. First, if you are on the support team, you need to understand how exactly is your client connected to your infrastructure. Where is he coming from? Is he, in an enterprise, inside an office? Is he out there, running on a PC, on a laptop? Is he in a coffee shop? What exactly is his connectivity? Then, is there any VPN configuration out there? If a VPN is configured, he might say, I'm coming from Korea, but you see him from the US. And the whole connection there gets routed and relayed and tunneled through VPN, and that craps all over the quality that he is going to get. And someone needs to tell him that or explain why that is. Then you need to understand if there is any firewall misconfiguration on his end, not on your end. Is the firewall there blocking UDP traffic? If it does, then you should probably expect that the quality will be lower because we need to relay it over TCP. Okay, so there are different types of things that can happen on your client's network that will end up affecting the quality that he is receiving. Then there's how much can you squeeze out of the client's network. Let's say this is a contact center, 200 agents. You need to be able to support 200 calls in parallel at the same time concurrently. Can his network support that kind of load? Not that easy to understand and answer. And here's something that I really like to do, and that's a question that I ask everyone that comes and says, we have a customer is complaining that our service is crap. Well, did you try something else with WebRTC? Does Google Hangouts work? Does it work better or the same? What about Whereby or Jitsi Meet or whatever. So usually or typically what I'm trying to do is to find the correlation between the issue, because if I can ask a client to go and check something similar but different, I can know if the issue is because of my network or something that happens on his end, or something that relates to WebRTC. And then, is this an issue that is affecting other clients or locations? Some issues are global, some issues are specific, some issues happen in different types of browsers, or once Chrome releases a new version or running on Mac or things like that. So you need to know these things in the support team to be able to assist your clients understanding what happens within their network. What should you be collecting from the user? Well, the location and the device information. Is he running on a Mac, a Windows, a Linux, an iOS, okay, an iPhone device, an Android device? What kind of browser is he running on? Where is he located? Do we see where he is located, and does it correlate well with where he thinks he is located? That would indicate a VPN, for example. You should collect the call negotiation information, because that can tell you a lot about firewall configurations and what fails and breaks there. Then call quality metrics, which will give you all the information you need in order to understand if there is issues in the network, packet losses, low bit rates, latencies, jitter, all of these ugly words that come to mind. And then you need also some network performance data. How good is his network connecting to your infrastructure, not necessarily inside the call. That's also a good information to have. Now, there are also other things that you need to think about here if you're with the support hat on your head when it comes to WebRTC. And that's, first of all, how do you collect these things quickly? If I go back to where we were with TalkDesk, they came to us and they said the following: we can collect the data, but it takes us time. The only thing that we want to do is to reduce that time to make that part as quickly as possible, because if we do it quickly, the turnover time for understanding and then solving the issues and getting back to the client becomes so much shorter. We can get them from a day or two towards a few minutes or an hour. So how exactly are you collecting these things quickly? Do you automate that? Is there a workflow in there that you already have in your support team to get that done? And can you do that with or without harassing the clients? You need to ask them for things. Oftentimes what I do is ask, if a customer of mine comes and says we have an issue with this and that, we need to understand. Then I start working them over this. Okay, so now go to your client that is complaining, tell him to run a call again, open the browser tab for Chrome WebRTC internals, do the download file, send me the download file, let's look at it together. So are we going to harass the customer when we do that? Not a good thing to do. So try to do things with harassing your customers as little as possible, as long as you can do that. And then how are you going to share the information with the developers? What do the developers want you to collect? What does that exactly mean? Okay, so there is almost always a disconnect between development and support. I had that when I worked in development, and they started coming with customer complaints, and at some point I said, stop it. I'm not going to answer anything unless you give me A, B, C, and D before we even start talking. So if you're in the support side, what exactly is it that you should bring a developer in order for him to be able to assist you? Make a pact there. If you're on the development side, just go and tell the support what it is that you want, and make it easy for them to give that to you. And if you're on the support side, go to the developers and just ask them, what is it that you want us to bring you each and every time? At least what do you want us to begin with? So we'll collect information without going and harassing you, the developers. And then once you're done and you've found the issue, how do you share that information with the client? How do you tell him, what? Your network is shitty. You need to do something about it. You need to work from Wi-Fi to wireline. If you look at here, there is packet loss on your network. It's on your end. You need to solve that. Or the things that we see happen only in the morning time. After that, everything is fine. So do something about it. How do you share that information and convey to him without him thinking that you're dumping everything on him. And then how do you do all that repeatedly with each and every client that you have? Okay, so what is the workflow that you're going to take in the steps that you are doing with your customers throughout the support cycle? Now there's the second part of training the support team and making sure that they are not part of the problem, but rather part of the solution itself. And when I looked at it, after we did that thing with TalkDesk, I looked at it and I said, I have a very good course for developers in WebRTC, and a lot of people take it. But at the end of the day, if you look at the support teams, this isn't what they need. And when I started thinking about it, the things that got to my mind was these types of things. If you're on the support side, you probably need to understand WebRTC, but mostly the basic concepts. You don't really care about the intricate details of how messages are sent and what goes on in each and every message and all of the nuances of the APIs. But you at least need to understand how it works. Then you need to know which tools you can use in order to collect and debug the issues. So, the most Spartan and basic solution is Chrome WebRTC internals, and the dump file is there. That's one. And the second one is probably, test.webrtc.org, which is like a test page of sorts. And on top of these tools, whatever other tools the organization has either built or outsourced or is using. But the support team needs to know about these tools and how to use them. Then they need to understand the product architecture and nuances. If I give an example, is this an SFU? Are you doing group calling? How many people or participants can you put on a call? Can they join from different locations and geographies? If the first user joins from, let's say, Europe, and then 10 more people join from the US, where is the media server going to be allocated? In Europe or in the US, or both, and it is going to be cascaded? That type of information is very relevant if you're a developer, to understand, the advantages and disadvantages and pick which one of these architectures you're going to build. But as a support person, you just need to know, first man in the room is the one that decides where the media server is going to be allocated. And if the first one is in Europe and all the rest are in the US, there's a problem. That's enough for him to understand that there is an issue, or why a lot of the people are going to complain about latencies or packet losses, because they connect towards continents, through continents for that call. So understanding these nuances of the architecture are important in support. Then they need to be conversant in the technical terms themselves. Why? Because this will help them talk to the developers when they need to explain issues. If a customer comes and says that he has, bad quality, how do you translate that to the developer? You should probably come and say, there's an issue with packet loss, or what I see is low bit rate. So you need to do some kind of work to almost spoon feed the developer, so we wouldn't need to go and check all of these things. This is part of the things that I would like to see in my support team if I'm running the show. And then you need to have some access to a knowledge base to the most common issues and the solutions for these issues. That's important because if things happen over and over again, I need to be able to provide the solutions over and over again through the support team and not through the R&D team. They need to gate these kinds of issues. Okay, so this is the things that I think need to be in the skill set of support teams when it comes to WebRTC applications. So that's it for me, at least now. I'm doing also a course. I'm starting that next month. The pre-launch happens in November around supporting WebRTC. It's less about people here joining that, and it's more about me trying to understand if I'm taking the right approach there. And Arin just shared the link. This link is kind of an agenda to the course that I have. And if you want, just go in there and comment about that. Say what you think so I can know more what I should probably do differently than what I'm currently planning in there. And if you do want to take that, and even if you want to be part of the pre-launch process, then I invite you to do so. Just contact me over blog Geek Me, and I'll be happy to see if I can help you out.
Thanks, Tsahi. I'll say I've got some people interested in being in a pre-launch or part of that. So definitely, this is a timely topic for us and our team, and I think in general in the WebRTC industry, it's kind of representative of the fact that WebRTC as a whole, the technology and the use of it has come a long way, that we're talking less about, which browsers support in it, and now we're talking about how do we support it, out there in production. So that's a great sign of maturity for what we're all working on as a whole here. So I want to ask a couple of questions here for you. So first, if you think about a WebRTC application that is a purely B2B use case versus one that is maybe more consumer focused, do you see any differences in what support might look like in those situations, or should it be irrelevant to the use case?
So support will always be relevant to the use case because of the different architectures. That's the first thing. Okay. The second part is each vendor or each let's say each company will end up having a different types of customers with different kinds of nuances and problems. For example, if you deal with consumers, the main issue that you'll have is that they have shitty networks, they don't know about it, and they have no clue how to use Wi-Fi properly. So I have a client that came and said once, you know what, we need to deal with broadcasters that are huge. They have a huge following of 10,000 people that come online to watch them live, and they still don't understand that they cannot do it from their basement over Wi-Fi. It just doesn't work. Okay, so don't complain because of. So you need to deal with these kinds of, let's say, human material when you work on the consumer space. Now, when you work on the enterprise space, on the B2B space, then you get a different type of clients that I have that come and say, well, you know what, we can't do the call at all. After 1 or 2 minutes, the call gets throttled and thrown away. And when you check why, well, they're using Meraki. And the Meraki access points, the IT guy decided that BitTorrent and encrypted BitTorrent peer-to-peer connections are bad. Not peer-to-peer, but, so they just block that, and guess what? It blocks WebRTC, no matter what you're doing with WebRTC, even if it's not peer-to-peer. So you'll have different kinds of common issues that will happen in each and every one of these places. So there will be nuances around the support.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to give you a really specific example that we ran into recently, and we won't do a full debugging session of this now, but curious to hear your take on how you handle it in a support situation. So we had have an application where we're doing extensive logging, and everything that we can tell from this particular conversation that we know failed, everything we could tell in the log says it worked. The connections were established, video was exchanged, everything should be great. But we know from talking to the users who were one half of the conversation who was involved in that they were in their office in the US, and the person they were talking to happened to be sitting in a cafe in Europe. And they could not see the connection. They could not see what was going on. And so I think it's an interesting thing. Like you said, 90% of these problems are probably network related. They're probably related to the user. And that's most likely the situation in this case, and certainly what the logging tells us. It makes me think too about support from not only the technical perspective, but maybe how you message things in the application and the application design itself. Because in this particular case, we're still a little stumped on what may have happened in that particular situation. You almost think that, well, maybe it's as simple as they had their speakers turned off and they were looking at a different tab of their browser, and it did actually work, and they just didn't realize it.
Yes.
Which would be an embarrassing situation. But sometimes, can the logs lie, or you have something to look at outside of the logs too?
I think it it ends up being what you're logging and where. I'll give another, with Talkdesk, we did something there. And then we started selling it to other companies. And one of the trialing one comes back and says, we have a problem. Why does the call quality doesn't show anything? So we go look at it. It looks weird. So I send it to our R&D and they come back and say, well, they didn't allow access to the microphone. So the call failed. Mm-hmm. And we have the logs, we just don't show it to the customer. So the first thing we did, we put it in Rendwine. So we have a bug to fix that is, let's add an indication that, we didn't do the call because you didn't give access. So, and then let me ask you this. Do you know if you decided to block access to the microphone in a certain website, how can you allow it for the next call? What is the way to do that?
I don't know.
Exactly.
In the next website?
No, in the same website. You go to, let's say, Crowdcast.io. Accidentally, you press deny.
Oh, right. Well, I know that in my browser, I can go back. There's a, I don't recall the exact path, but there's a way that in the browser, I can go back in and change that setting for that particular site, right?
So if you're in support, how do you say that to a customer?
Better than I just did. You have to have a script or knowledge base, right?
And then let's go backwards. If you're in development,
right?
How do you tell that to the customer and allow him to do it on his own without needing your support?
Right.
Okay, so there are a lot of things that we need to start doing with WebRTC that aren't WebRTC, but are actually the user experience around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree on that. And I think one of the really important points that you made in this is that it's a two-way conversation between the support staff in a company and the development staff. That for the developers to do their job, they need certain information from the support people. But for the support people to give that to them, the developers probably have to make some code changes to enable it, or some logging, or and then the third element there to throw in too, as we just said, is the design team too, right? Putting things into the design and the flow of the application, so that ideally you're eliminating the need for support entirely around a particular issue, or at least making it easier to work around when it's necessary. So.
Yes, and it's always hard because if you think about the amount of clashes and problems you have between support and between developers and QA, and that's like the friction there is on a daily basis. None of it exists with the support, because support comes after the product got released and nobody cares about it anymore in development. So it's like, leave us alone, deal with it on your own. And that's like the biggest mistake you can actually make. Because from that moment on, the improvement iterations will come only from this feedback that comes from support. So I guess that in the last year, I started admiring a bit more this function that is called support, and the technical support around things that relate to WebRTC, and understanding the amount of challenges that they have. It was a thing that I didn't think about for the last 6 or 7 years before I started working with these teams.
That's a great observation and really important. So you were telling me just before the call too, my last question here, that the Google team has reached a really important internal milestone of completely meeting version 1.0 of the WebRTC spec. Can we close with maybe you expanding on that a little bit and what that means for WebRTC in general? It's obviously much broader implications than just support. So
I don't know what completely means. I know that they've reached a milestone that is WebRTC 1.0. I'm not, into the inner details there, but my hunch or my guess is that what they're saying is WebRTC 1.0 is currently code complete within Chrome. Which Chrome? I don't know, 80 something probably. But it means the following. It means that today we have a spec compliant solution for WebRTC in Chrome, or as close as a spec compliant thing to something that isn't 1.0 yet. Okay. And the thing there is that once you reach that point, it's a matter of bug fixes and interoperability issues. And yes, there are things that might not be there that are still mandatory or optional and they're not doing, and that's fine. that's how we deal with standards anyway. You start building a solution that implements a standard, and then you iterate to improve it. Getting to that point means that from now on, a lot of the work is going to shift from running around in circles to implement WebRTC towards improving the solution itself and making sure that it works better. They've done so up until now, but there is a nuanced way to doing it once you reach that point. And my guess is that this is also something that they are going to discuss and talk about in the Cranky Geek event in 2 weeks, because two things that are going to happen there. We'll have the traditional session by Google about the updates around WebRTC and the Chrome implementation of it. But this year, we're going to do something new as well, which is something like a 1-hour session with all browser vendors in a single panel. So we'll have the Chrome guys, the Firefox guys, the Edge guys, and Apple come and talk about their browsers and how they look at WebRTC and develop it.
Makes sense. So I don't know if you're noticing in the comments here, but
yes.
We have an esteemed viewer with us today, Fippo, and there's some discussion of whether they have truly met that or not, or whether that's possible at this point. So we can at a minimum say we're progress is being made. We're headed towards that point. It'll be interesting to see what they say at the Cranky Geek event coming up. And nonetheless, we are very much getting to that point of support versus implementation of the spec in general. But perhaps more to come. Certainly more to come across all of the browser vendors for sure, regardless of the status at Google at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I think that's we actually have my goal in this new version of WebRTC Live has been to keep them relatively short. We've gone over my standard time frame for these. You're officially our longest guest so far, but that is a compliment. There's a lot of good information in here and good discussion afterwards. I think this is a really interesting topic that I'm glad to see you talking about, and we're certainly looking forward to doing more of it ourselves. Any final announcements or comments that you want to make before we close out?
No, come to Cranky Geek, say hi.
Definitely. November 15th, crankygeek.com. And our next episode will be on Wednesday, November 13th at 12 o'clock Eastern. We'll be speaking with Dr. Alex from Cosmos Software about real-time AV1. So that's going to be another really interesting conversation. Just saw him do some updates on this at the IIT conference last week, I think. I've lost all sense of time in my travels. But in any case, it was a great presentation. And so looking forward to having him as a guest here on Wednesday, November 13th. So thanks, Tsahi. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And let's make it live.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.Ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services, and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.